Yeah, so welcome to Success Channel. Today we will be discussing on ad hoc and institutional arbitration. Today we have expert speaker panel. Let's welcome them. We have Shweta Bharti, who is senior partner, Hammurabi and Salman Partners. She has consolidated experience of more than 2 decades in arbitration, mediation, and litigation. Mr. Rohit Palwal, who is experienced head legal with 18 years of experience in the legal field. Mr. Janendra Chumbak, he is a managing partner, associated law offices, and he has more than 16 years experience into litigation, non-litigation. We also have Mr. Muhammad Ismail, who is founder, Chennai Legal Consultancy, and has more than 17 years experience into litigation, non-litigation, and civil, criminal, and other litigation. I'm Abhijit Tople. I'm a head of legal Geo Financial Services. I have more than 20 years experience and 5 years into sales, marketing, and manufacturing, and 15 years into litigation, non-litigation as an advocate as well as in-house legal counsel. So let us start. My first question is to Ms. Shweta. What is ad hoc and institutional arbitration?
So ad hoc arbitrations have been the trend in India for all the times to come. In the last 20 years of my arbitration practice, I think largely I've seen ad hoc arbitrations to be having a predominance. But then institutional arbitrations have really been catching up fast. And I think in the last decade or so, I've seen there to be an emphasis on institutional arbitration. There is a lot of advocacy that we as practitioners of dispute resolution have been doing on the benefits of institutional arbitration, and therefore there to be a migration from ad hoc to institutional arbitration. So both of them have their advantages and disadvantages. So if you want to understand what exactly is ad hoc arbitration, is when the parties have the liberty to choose the arbitrator, and also have the liberty to decide on the rules and procedures which would fit the needs of their disputes. That is what is called ad hoc arbitration. Whereas in institutional arbitration is, on the other hand, where a specialized institution with a permanent character, which has its own rules and regulations, and it also has its administrative functions and arbitral processes, and is called basically the institutional arbitration. So if you look at the contours and the procedures of arbitral proceedings, it is determined largely by the institution designated by the parties, and as a result of which the structured procedure and the administrative support that is provided by the institutional arbitrations, it definitely provides distinct advantages which are not always available in cases of ad hoc arbitrations. So what I see is that I think COVID-19 has opened a new sphere for Outlook and forced the arbitration regime to adopt to institutional arbitration, because of the factor that institutional arbitration already has a certain amount of infrastructure to be able to have this kind of virtual hearings. So, and if you look at the comparative advantage between ad hoc and institutional arbitration, what I have to see is that in ad hoc arbitration, the procedures are guided largely by the parties, as I already mentioned, and it requires the cooperation between the parties. So you need to have an understanding with the opposite side counsel as well, and which also sometimes involves a lot of time. I've seen a lot of resistance coming from the opposite side counsel on certain procedures which are required to be adopted, which are suggested to be adopted by another party. And when a dispute is in existence, it is difficult to expect cooperation among the parties. Most of the times they are already hostile when they have reached the arbitration stage. So then it becomes very difficult to bring to the table both the side of the lawyers to agree on a certain procedure. In institutional arbitration, as compared to that, I think the procedural rules are already absolutely established by the institution. The formulation of rules is therefore not really a cause of concern, and the fees are also largely fixed and regulated under the rules of institution. While in ad hoc arbitration, the fee is largely dependent upon the arbitrator's whims and fancies. And before the amendment of the Arbitration Act of 2015, I think before that there was a lot of arbitrariness in terms of the fixation of fee. It sometimes was whatever came to the mind of the arbitrator used to be the fee of the disputes. So it was becoming very expensive, very time taking in terms of the time that it used to take. And therefore, I think in that kind of a scenario, institutional arbitration had a clear edge, because in that case, at least the institutions had a predictable fees. So you know the cost of arbitration, while you are agreeing to a certain institution. So that was another challenge. The third challenge that I saw in ad hoc arbitration was the lack of trained staff, because most of the times we, and even now for that matter, we organize the steno, we organize the venue, we organize for a lot of things which facilities are already available with an institutional arbitration. They have a very trained staff, they have library facilities for ready references of judgments. And so these are categorical advantages in terms of going for institutional arbitration as compared to ad hoc arbitration. Then the other aspect is also about the institutions maintaining a panel of arbitrators. So in case of ad hoc arbitration, in case the arbitrator falls sick, or in one of the cases when he died, we had to replace him with another arbitrator. The matter had already progressed to a substantial stage. And at that stage, for an arbitrator to come to understand all of those discussions that had happened in the past and then get into the matter was quite a challenge. And then, agreeing to an arbitrator at that point of time also was a challenge. While in cases of institutional arbitration, they already have a panel of arbitrators. The parties can choose the arbitrator from the panel. So such arbitral institutions, they provide for, the specialized arbitrators. And that advantage is distinctly not available in cases of ad hoc arbitration. In many of the arbitral institutions, like the ICC, the International Chamber of Commerce, you have an experienced committee which scrutinizes the arbitral awards. In fact, in most of the arbitral institutions in India also now we have started having that kind of an analysis of the arbitral award. So in an ad hoc arbitration, once the award is passed, the award is at the whims and fancies of the arbitrator. And therefore there was a lot of indulgence which was given under section 34 also by the courts, because in ad hoc arbitration there is a certain element of concern that has been expressed by the courts, while in institutional arbitration, because the expert committees have already examined the award, and once they have examined, then the chances of the court setting aside the award under section 34 becomes minimal, because the scrutiny provides for a legal and technical flaw which has already been taken care of, and all the defects in the award has already been taken care of by the institution. So that was, that is in fact a huge advantage of institutional arbitration over the ad hoc arbitration. The other aspect is also about incapability of an arbitrator because of whatever reason. I mean, he may just be biased, or he may also at some point of time, decide that he is now incapable. So as I mentioned that, choosing from the panel of arbitrators becomes easier. And then the discipline of having an institution in itself with all the systems in place, and the ability to be able to have part of the hearings through virtual courts and part of the hearings through physical hearings, all of that is possible. So these are kind of distinct advantages which I think the institutional arbitration has over ad hoc arbitration. And therefore, I was also mentioning that there are a few judgments that started to come from 2009 onwards by the honorable courts, especially Supreme Court, and then onwards by the different high courts as well, where they started giving a lot of emphasis to the, emphasis and push to for the parties to go into this kind of an institutional arbitration proceeding. So I remember this case that I mentioned was Nandan Biometrics, which was a 2009 Supreme Court case. And in that case, the court had very categorically held that an arbitration clause which required institutional arbitration, and even though the court had not identified the particular institution and the agreement also did not provide for it, but it mentioned the fact that it should go for institutional arbitration, the party should be relegated to institutional arbitration. So I think, in fact, thereafter, there are a lot of judgments. If you look at the series of judgments which have been passed by the Supreme Court and then by the Honorable High Courts, there is a certain emphasis that the parties should relegate themselves to an institutional arbitration, preferably.
Mr. Janender, you have any view on this?
Yes, as had already been told by Ms. Bharati about arbitration, so it's the way where we resolve our disputes by a mechanism which is out of the court, and which again is in the two parts. In normally, which one is ad hoc and the other is institutional arbitration, which is already explain both of them, which of them is there. So ad hoc basically in India, right from the type all the commercial had started, this ad hoc arbitration is there, though in an informal way. Though after this uncyclical model we are following that, but it has been there as part of Indian procedure as ad hoc arbitration. And institutional arbitration is something different, which is now getting a lot of popularity in India, but it has been in use throughout the world, previously also. And now India is also, getting to it because of the reach of India to all over the world. There are a lot of commercial international disputes which are arising, and this institutional arbitration helps to reach out to these international disputes. Because normally India has also lost out into a lot of these issues because of the fact that India was not having this institution in place, which is already there in a lot of other countries. So a lot of commercial issues are also going to these countries also for that reason only. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Rohit.
So, as discussed by both the panelists, the ad hoc arbitration is always a very popular mechanism of doing arbitration in India, and institution has always been very popularized in the abroad. Outside India, you'll see wherever the foreign parties are there, institutional arbitrations are preferred, because institutional arbitrations have the norms, the rules which the institutional arbitrations have. They are very very set, very prescribed rules have been honored and respected by both the parties of both the countries also. So maybe that's the reason international forum institutional arbitrations are very popular, and in domestic we always have a ad hoc kind of arbitrations. And yes, the 2015 and 2018 amendments, if you'll see in an arbitration act. So in order to the attract the FIs, because when FIs come here and invest in India, all the arbitration, they are not very comfortable with that kind of arbitration. So I think that's the need what I think government or the legislatures thought of, that putting institutional arbitration or forcing institutional arbitration both on a domestic sphere also and on an institution also. Because until unless we don't have a the atmosphere of institutional arbitration domestic, it is very difficult to translate into institution also. I think that's the need what I think which actually puts the institutional arbitration into 2018 or 15 amendment what we have seen. So yeah, that's how it is.
Okay, my question is to Shweta. Shweta, why institutional arbitration become important in Indian scenario, so that legislation need to amend the act?
Okay, so I think I have seen a trend generally from 2009 onwards. There is a certain emphasis and fixation for institutional arbitration. So one was, of course, the changing global scenario, which largely was the reason behind the promulgation of institutional arbitration, and the emphasis on institutional arbitration. But largely, the kind of benefits that you have with institutional arbitration, I think that was lacking hugely in ad hoc. And the kind of time, I mean, we are talking about the pre-amendment era of 2015. So the kind of time it to take more than, almost 10 years, 15 years to complete an arbitration. So that in itself was a major challenge for most of the parties who want to go into arbitration. The second was, of course, the rules and regulations, because it was so ad hoc. It was completely dependent sometimes on the parties and sometimes on the imposition of the arbitrator who was going to be the presiding arbitrator. So it was more on his, a want of certain way of doing things. The third was also because it was becoming more and more costly and expensive in the sense that in ad hoc arbitration, the arbitrator's words are going to be paramount. There is fixed amount that is going to be a fee. I mean, all of it was pre 2015 era. Of course, after the amendment, a lot of these issues have already been taken care of by the statute. But then there was a certain amount of uncertainty on the fees as well. Then on the panel of arbitrator, if for whatever reason the arbitrator either has fallen sick or has expired, then the arbitrator after the arbitration has moved to a certain challenge in itself, and therefore to then look for another arbitrator and then he understanding the matter, getting into the grip, and then restarting the whole process. That was another challenge. And the fourth challenge was, the kind of infrastructure that was required. We would be scouting around, and even now for ad hoc arbitrations, keep scouting around the clubs like the Niti Bagh Club in Delhi, various other places which are expensive, which became the hub of arbitrations. So all of this was the basic reason why there was a need felt for institutional arbitration. And I think the institutional arbitration, from the time it came into being, it has taken care of all of these concerns of the parties, irrespective of the understanding of the parties that it is expensive. I think it has enabled the parties take care of all of these concerns in a large way.
Okay. Rohit, your view, please.
So as I said, look, in international atmosphere, it's already a tried and tested kind of a process. The institutional arbitrations in domestic scenario, I think we need to be tested more, and not even in the high ticket kind of cases. Even in the low ticket kind of cases, we need to see how institutional arbitration in a domestic scenario really works. And as I told, the institutional arbitration is getting popularity because yes, we need to be at par with what the international standard, international norms of an arbitration, so that FIs also be very uncomfortable while dealing with the any domestic entity for that matter. So that's the one reason, and Supreme Court also time and again push in its judgment when it says the interested party cannot choose arbitration. So in a way they are also pushing to an institutional arbitration than the ad hoc kind of arbitration. So yeah, that's the reason institution is getting popular day by day, and yet that's
Yeah.
the future also. That's the future of the arbitration.
Okay.
I would agree to Rohit on that. The courts have also been consistent in their view in pushing the parties towards institutional arbitration. And I think right from the time of 2009, when I remember one of the cases of Nandan Biometrics, which was passed by Supreme Court in 2009, there was a very categorical need for institutional arbitration felt by the Honorable Supreme Court even at that point of time. So it had pushed the parties to institutional arbitration without identifying the institution, because that was not mentioned in the agreement. And since then, there have been series of judgments, where the Supreme Court and different high courts as well have actually pushed the parties towards institutional arbitration in a major way.
Mohammed, uh, Mohammed, my question is to you. Will arbitration move online after COVID-19 lockdown and all? We can't hear you, Mohammed. Okay, Shweta, what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, in fact, this is something which we have been experiencing. So the first 3 months, from March to June, there was a complete lull. There was no movement in the arbitration matters. And suddenly, after June, we realized that this is not going to see an end here, and this is probably going to go on for too long. So that is when the courts also started migrating towards virtual hearings. I'll keep using the term video conferencing, virtual hearings, and online arbitrations in a similar manner. So the courts also started functioning in a virtual hearing, and then we also started seeing that the arbitrators are also waking up and now pushing the parties to go for virtual arbitrations. So in fact, a lot of those kind of matters which are document only kind of arbitrations, where oral evidences are not required, can definitely go for virtual arbitrations. Even for cases where there is oral evidence required, or the entire matter has to now shift from the physical hearing to a virtual hearing. I mean, if you look at the provisions of the Act also, Section 19 being the enabler, it very clearly says that the tribunal is not bound by the procedures of CPC or the Evidence Act, and they are free to choose, whatever procedure they want, the arbitral tribunal conducting the proceedings. So the parties can, adopt to arbitrations through a virtual hearing in the same manner as is being conducted by the court. And the arbitral tribunal can also in the same manner have a proper laid out procedure in terms of how it wants to conduct virtual hearings through electronic mail, and conduct proceedings through video conferencing, and it will take care of all of the concerns that we have. So I think it is going to be the new normal to go for virtual hearings and arbitration through video conferencing. I have absolutely no doubt about it. And I will also talk when we go around that, is that in fact there are a lot of these institutions which already have enabled provisions for enabling it to have video conferencing arbitrations through video conferencing.
Janender, your view, please.
Yeah. I think I agree with her that post-COVID, the arbitration will move online only. And this is something which is required at this stage also, because the movement has been restricted, and then all the matters which is already there pending with the arbitrators, or any new dispute which is rising, they can't be just there forever, because even everybody is realizing now the another mode of working, which is online. Even arbitration can be there online. Arbitration also can be conducted through an online mode. And arbitration, one real asset is that, which has been highlighted by Ms. Bharti also, that arbitration, it is not to be governed by the Evidence Act. So in all the cases, it is not be required that you require an evidence to be recorded. So in arbitration can be conducted online in a much better way as compared to a civil proceeding which are conducted by a court. And this is something which has to be realized by everybody also, and something to make the system also move, so that all the disputes which is already there, because it is already taken 6 months and we don't know how much more time it will take. So at this stage, it is the need of the hour that arbitration also moves online, and everything which is already pending should move ahead. Yeah.
Mohammed, your view?
Hello.
Yeah,
So now it is clear?
Yeah. Please tell me.
Hear me, sir? My voice is audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sir, as far as this online arbitration is concerned, because after this COVID-19, online arbitration is very effectively is going on in India, because by conducting through online, by using the information, and parties are also very much because in remote area and rural area, who were obtaining loans in below more than 2 lakh rupees, very below ticket area, they are unable to come forward and each and every year and attend the council engaging. It is very difficult on the part. As far as the lower amount is value is concerned, they can using this Zoom meeting, because you are sitting in Mumbai, I am sitting in Madras, because we are in person, we are very interacting. So it is a easy way. Even in high courts, in all high courts in India, even in Supreme Courts, it is easy way of mitigating the expenses of the parties who are all approaching the court of law for getting a justice. It is easy way for getting a justice through if it is a complexity of matters which requires the in-person hearing is required, and adducing evidence is more important, and the vital documents should be examined, and the parties examination of the particular witness is more crucial in that matter. Those particular cases alone, that online is not at all possible. And as far as that is also now possible, even in ICC arbitration is concerned, they had conducted mega arbitration. More than 1,10,000 documents were submitted, and 22,000 exhibits were marked. That is recorded in ICC arbitration. That is a mega arbitration. It runs more than 10-digit number of US dollars. They had claimed that was the big arbitration in across the globe. So all the arbitration in London Chamber of Commerce, and as far as that, another one is Delhi High Court also held that in Delhi International Chamber of Commerce also, they had given the specific direction to that particular Delhi International Arbitration Center to adapt some procedures, guidelines to be framed. As far as that evidence is concerned, in case in arbitration, some evidentiary value has to be recorded through video recording the evidence, and video conferencing mode, they are adapting that procedure for conducting the arbitration proceedings. And section 19 is very clear. The party consent for particular procedure to be adapted for conducting arbitration, the same should be followed. In case in the absence of such procedure should be adapted, then the arbitrator is having the power. The power is omnipotent power vested with the arbitrator to adapt the procedure in section as per section 24 and 9 section subsection 3. So therefore, arbitrator is having the omnipotent power to frame rules. Only he has to give the adequate opportunity to the both parties to adduce evidence and submit the document, and equal opportunity and fair opportunity should be given to the both parties to make their submission. The claimant is making a submission, and defendant also has to give the respondent also given with the defense. They have to make the defense. Both opportunities should be given, and evidence recording also through online also it is very possible. Nowadays we have to utilize that information technology, and there is each and every nook and every corner, everybody is having the smartphone. So therefore they utilize this option. Only the rich people around can approach the court of law. That is, previously it was in that criteria, it was in that particular thing. Now you can, even as person Aam Aadmi also can approach the court of law by using this information technology. It is
Right.
very useful to common man, as well as it is very useful to all the men, even corporate also. It is time consumption is very less comparing to approaching the court and comparing to approaching a in-person hearing in arbitration.
Right. Right. So
So
online,
it's very
it's
useful to
true.
all. And data part in India is concerned, as far as in India alone, more than 11 billion sheets of paper are used in courts. For this manufacturing of the 11 billion papers, more than 13 lakh trees were cut down, and 109 billion liters of water was used for manufacturing this paper. If you're
Right.
using this paperless code, it is very useful. It is eco-friendly. It is curbing the all the ecosystem. Also, it is it is useful for eco-friendly and curbing the climate change. Also, this is
Right.
that is
Rohit, Rohit, I have next question for you. What are the advantages and disadvantages of online arbitration?
Yeah. So advantages, I think, with with the data and all those semantics, I think Ismail has already, and Shweta and Jinendra also for the matter, they've already discussed there are a lot of advantages of online. Obviously, it will, the proximity of both the parties becomes very on a very high possibility, so that they can be very proximate, have an interaction wherever they see. Cost effective is also. The challenges what I see is, as the Ismail gave an example of a mobile. Everybody have a smartphone, but the smartphone becomes dumb the moment we don't have a connectivity. So I think on a rural sector, or where the connectivity is the problem in India, so we also know how well connected we are vis-a-vis the the internet connections. So in a rural sector also, in metropolitan, we also struggle a lot having making a simple normal call also. Yes, there are bandwidth issues are there with the broadband and all. So I don't know what to speak about the rural sector. I think that will one of the factor which needs to be seen and figured out, how 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 all those challenges uh, can be actually iron out all those things. So I think that's the only thing. Technology, obviously, it comes with a boon and bane both. So that's how it's all come in the future. So we need to see how to take it forward.
Your view, Shweta?
Yeah, so I mean, advantages, I think we've already discussed on, it is a paperless proceeding, so we are saving on the trees. It is, I mean, remote participation, so you're able to protect yourself from this epidemic. It's the enhanced collaboration that we have noticed over a period of time. Now, when we are talking about enhanced collaboration, how are we talking about enhanced collaboration? It is, in multinational companies like yours, where you have a global presence, and you are yourself as well as your law firms are widely dispersed across the different jurisdictions, and where there are disputes, many of the disputes which have become intermingled into each other, and therefore there are different organizations, different law firms working together. In those kind of circumstances, the ability for parties, legal teams, technical experts, and even the panelists to fully participate in an arbitration proceeding in a real-time manner from remote location provides a considerable cost and convenience advantages. So, and also, the transcription of proceedings, which can be consulted. You can see what is being typed out, and then that is being utilized. So I think in terms of advantages, that is one advantage. In case of multinational corporations, it is a huge advantage. The second aspect that I see is that there is a lot of close collaboration which is happening between the legal team and its clients, regardless of the kind of location that you are sitting in Mumbai. Ismail is sitting in Chennai. I'm sitting here in Delhi. We are able to have a webinar, which is not possible in kind of a physical format unless we all converge together in a place. So to be able to collaborate together with the client and the legal team has become much more efficient. We are able to have a 24/7 access on our private security. I call my table as a war room. This is like my war room where I'm able to deal with a lot of challenges, issues, timeline that is provided to me, and the kind of the comfort of time that I have. So I'm sometimes working at 12 at night, sometimes working at 8 in the morning. So all of those challenges have been able to taken care of by online mechanism. So besides the ones that we have identified, there are very multiple benefits and advantages that we have with going the online way.
So, Mr. Janinder, what is your view on this?
I think Ms. Bharti already talked about a lot of advantages. I also agree with all these advantages. So I will just point out some disadvantages of this online arbitration. So one of the major disadvantages that starts for this is the infrastructure that is required. First of all, as has been pointed by Rohit also, that as on date, there are a lot of connectivity issues. So not even in rural, even in all these urban cities also, a lot of connectivity issues at times. So the first and foremost thing is that is required to be there. And second is that the electronic communication is no substitute for the ability of that face-to-face conversation to foster important, objections and at times, because we are still, in that stage where we still feel that some things are required to be sorted out when we are there and to face-to-face. So at times these issues arise, and there are a lot of issues which are not arbitrable online. There are a lot of issues which requires and actually evidence to be led by the parties, and where it is required that evidence is required to be led, the parties are required to be examined and cross-examined. So these are the things which at this stage is really difficult to start in an online mode. We still are required to be face-to-face. We're still required to be together when a party is required to cross-examine. Though it has been, said by Mohammed that there are certain cases where it can be done, and we are still in the process of doing it. But still, it is really very difficult to, do a cross-examination in an online mode. Because when you're doing a cross-examination, when the evidence is to be recorded, you need the parties to be together. You need the parties to. So the biggest disadvantage of the cases that all the cases cannot be referred to arbitration. So when we are doing this, we have to choose which matter we can do online, or what we can do, we have to divide it in two parts. Partly we can do it online. Wherever it is required, the physical presence of the parties are required, then we can do it partly online and partly physically.
Right. Mohammed,
Yeah.
you have any inputs on this?
So now it is clear.
Yep.
As far as advantages are concerned, there are a lot of advantages in online arbitration. Disadvantages is concerned, and more particularly in advantages sector is concerned, in commercial litigation like NBFC and banking, all that the recoverable amount in financial matters it can be done through this online arbitration by using the information technology, because all are document based cases. There is no in-person hearing and in-person examination of witnesses is required, or any technical expert is required to be adduced the evidence for come to a conclusion by the arbitrator. So for document-based cases, for commercial litigation is concerned, there's online arbitration by using that email and video conferencing and web-based communications, or it is we have to put a red carpet welcome to them to come, because it is a time-bound manner. Comparing to the court, it is an in-person hearing. It will take a huge time. Whereas in online process, it is very time is also it will not consume that much of time for getting adjournment. All this process, it is very minimum. So they may submit the claim, and the other side has to make the, in case of counter, they have to file the counter, and whatever documents are available on the side of the claimant, based upon that, if any counter document has to be filed on the side of the respondent, they may file it, and based upon the documentary material available on record, the court may come, the tribunal may come to the conclusion to pass orders. So it is easy for the commercial litigation like financial matters and other document-based litigation is concerned. As far as the non-document based, any examination of the parties are concerned, that is examination of the parties. The in-person hearing is must, because the body language is main thing for conducting the cross examination of the party. Because based upon the body, if any truth has to come out of the particular witness, we have to use the body language by the counsels. Because one question is put forward with the particular witnesses, and what is his body language, based upon the next question has to be put forward to the particular witness. So that the truth will come out, then the judge will come to a conclusion what was happened, what is the crucial issue involved in this, and based upon the issues, the trial would be concluded. And so therefore that kind of some peculiar cases is in-person hearing is must, and that too we are in advanced technology. Even that is also possible in online arbitration. If you put 360-degree camera inside that particular room, in that room nobody is there, only the witness alone is there, and he cannot be tutored by any advocate. And if it is 160-degree camera is there, and we can definitely conduct a fair and just and reasonable examination can be conducted in through this online.
Right.
And as far as the video clipping is concerned, if any oral submission is required by the arbitrator, the claimant as well as the respondent can make the oral submission by video clipping. And also, if any documents, any evidence has to be adduced, they can attach it and send it through by email. So all these processes are there. At the time of appealing before the appellate authority under section 34, all these are video clipping are there now, then it is go against them. They cannot challenge the award as easily.
Right.
Comparing to in-person hearing, online hearing is for a round of litigation would be come to end.
Right.
It is an easy way. By using the technology, we can achieve a lot of goal. And as far as the online technology, online arbitration is concerned, it is more effective, more efficient, cost-effective, eco-friendly, and also it is minimize the transportation expenses of all the litigants,
Right.
poor litigants. As far as the corporates are concerned, it is also very much they can, because that is only a time limit is fixed by all the thing. Even in arbitration act is concerned, section 29A is very clear. Within a period of 12 months time, they have to complete the trial. So if they want to exceed the time, then the party has to give the consent. Failure on the side of the other party to give the consent, they have to approach the court for getting the extension of time. That is also very limited period only the court will give. So the time limit also very limited. And as far as that written paper bound arbitration is concerned, documentary based arbitration is concerned, it is only 6 months time has been fixed under section 29B. So therefore, day by day basis, within a time frame of 6 months time, they can get justice. And even if you go for appeal, there is no possibility of they cannot make that stand, because everything is recorded. Whatever I am talking to you, everything is recorded. Likewise, I cannot change my word, what I am submitting here. So if it is prefer an appeal under section 34, we can make this evidence as a video clipping as a evidence. So therefore, there is no possibility of setting aside the award passed by the tribunal. So online is very perfect, and it is a time convenient. It is also very useful to all. It will be useful to the innocent poor litigant as well as the big corporate beings.
Yeah, I agree. Just to add to this, and I think I have also had similar experiences where the arbitrators had raised concerns with respect to the witness getting tutored in cases of arbitration through the cross-examination through video conferencing. So that was a concern which was raised by the arbitrator himself. That what if the witness is reading from a script that the party has been given, and it is prepared prior to the hearing, or if he is following the instruction from a third party during the testimony. So these are aspects which makes a lot of difference if the arbitration is happening online. And also, yes, you're right to the extent that as litigators, we have seen body language plays a very important role in doing cross-examination. So body language or facial expression, the tone and answering of the witness, you can make out a lot of facts just by analyzing that, which may not really happen in cases of arbitration through virtual hearing, because there the witness, you can only see a certain part of him, and that also he is in different zones. So probably, he does not express his body language and facial expression in the same manner. So that becomes a very crucial aspect. And just to add one more aspect of it, I think, certain stakeholders also have raised concerns with respect to the safety of documents being shared via virtual platforms. So their understanding is that there may be several documents which needs to be circulated or passed by the case counsel, so which are shared online as well. So therefore, the type of encryption that the virtual platform contain it warrants an assessment from the viewpoint of experts in order to ensure the utmost confidentiality is maintained throughout the hearings.
So
These special inputs from my side.
one open question to all. This arbitration proceeding, is it recorded, and these recordings are available to the clients if those arbitrations are online? Any view on this? As on date, what is the
I think I missed the
what
question.
will
There's some connectivity issue. I missed the question.
The question is, all this, arbitration, if it is happening online, then are those arbitrations recorded? And second question is whether those recorded clippings are available to the litigants to review what they, discussed and all argued in the court.
Serious concerns about the confidentiality. Yeah,
that's my question. Whether it is actually a practice,
Yeah, I
whether
think
they are
that-
sharing or not.
No, normally it is a practice. Normally, they try to record and say the whatever the clippings, whatever the proceedings that are happening, that is in arbitration. Though at times it has been prohibited. At times, even in one of the cases in Mumbai High Court has also said that recording of these clippings is not prohibited, is completely prohibited. But that kind of consent is not there with respect to arbitration. Normally, clients and parties they take this leverage and record whatever proceedings are going on. And one of the issues that being faced in one of my cases with respect to a mediation proceedings happening in an arbitration matter. Unlike in a traditional way of mediation where parties can discuss everything, but in a case of mediation where parties are online and everything is getting recorded, they are not.
We lost you, Janendra. We lost you. Any other view?
Yeah, I have a view to share in this. Is in many of the arbitration proceedings, I have
Also
seen.
feel in case I say something that will be recorded, so that will completely go against me, and the other party can use it anyway. It can email it to others. They can record it.
Right.
This confidentiality is also one of the concern in these online hearings.
Right. Shweta, you are saying something.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was saying, that in many of the arbitration matters, I've seen the arbitrator opposing the idea of recording, even though one of the parties had mentioned if we can record, especially the oral evidence part and the final arguments. And in one of the cases, I saw that the arbitrator has himself suggested that while for oral evidence, I think the testimony is already there and it is signed by the witness, so there's no question of recording that. But for final arguments, he had of the parties, and he said that this is only for his assistance at the time of passing of the award, even though we had given the written arguments. I think the arbitrators are deciding their own matter on how they want to go about it.
Okay. Rohit, your view, please. Rohit, your view.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, recording of a proceedings, as we have already discussed, obviously arbitrator has to decide. And I think if it is decided at the behest of the arbitrator, I think it still holds some admissibility, of value. Otherwise, I really don't know. Maybe, the practicing advocates, can tell better, the recording of any proceeding by a party, how, good it holds in evidence. And that again, obviously, without the permission of an arbitrator. But yes, if it is permissible by an arbitrator, it is recorded by an arbitrator. I think that is all. That can also be questioned on the on the behest that it has been tampered or something like that. So yes, challenges are there. Technology always comes with the challenges. This is all what you call hit and trial method that obviously we'll see in a future things. The more we'll do online thing, more challenges we'll see. So,
Right.
that's how it is. So talnology always come with a bone and main both actually.
So, right. So people can even record on their mobile phones and then later use those recordings for preparing their defense. Right. So my next question is to Shweta. What are the key practices for effective online arbitration?
The key practices are, the digitization of the documents. That is, I think, the most important aspect, that we have to have digitization of the documents in a proper manner sequentially, because that becomes the challenge for most courts I have seen, and most arbitrations also. It is the same thing. that unless and until it is in a proper form, the way it's done for international commercial arbitrations, it will become difficult. The second aspect is to have the technological aspect, the logistical aspect of online or virtual hearings in place, because that is another challenge which we have seen, that most of the times we are only trying to check each other's audio connection. In our case today also, we saw that for some time we were not able to hear Ismail. So all of these aspects also become very crucial to be taken into consideration at one point of time. And then of course the preparation, in terms of online application is very similar to how it would be offline. So in that sense, I do not really see so much. But these are some of the aspects which definitely to be taken care of.
Yeah. Yarinder, your view, please.
Yes. Yes, in addition to what has been already stated by Shweta, see, you also need to have a good infrastructure for that. First thing is required, because if it is not there, then it will be very difficult to hold these arbitrations and whatever online thing that we are doing. We need to have a good infrastructure, so which is actually working, and at the same time you have to ensure that whether the recording is permitted or not. If it is not permitted, you have to ensure the mechanism to ensure recording is not allowed. You have to, there has to be some kind of involvement where there is software that recording of these proceedings are not permitted. So there has to be these things you have to see, that if the proceedings that we are conducting are such which we want to retain the confidentiality, then you have to ensure an infrastructure which is not recording anything. Like, this is getting recorded, but there are certain platforms where things are not recorded. So you have to ensure that you are using that platform. So even otherwise, on that also, this, and then again you have to distinguish your cases. What are the cases which requires actually only the which can be concluded through online mode, and cases which cannot be done through online mode. There are certain arbitration matters which can be referred to online arbitration, certain matters which cannot be, which had already been pointed out, matters which require evidence. So when you're starting this, you have to bifurcate your matters, try and do the matters which can be done through online mode, which evidence is not required to be led, and where the evidence is required to be led, you have to do it in a partial way. You have to do it partly. So you have to distinguish matters in this, so that for a smooth working. So it will not be a situation where you start with the arbitration, later on you come to know, okay, this case requires arbitration, evidence, then how to start. So you should be aware of beforehand, and the parties also should know, okay, we are conducting these many hearings online, and for these two hearings, you may be required to come online physically. So you have to bifurcate your cases before starting these matters. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Mohammed, you have any view on this? Hello, Mohammed.
Hello.
Mohammed, your view, please.
My voice is clear, sir?
Yep.
But I am unable to hear you. This is the only interruption in online arbitration.
Right.
That's the challenge I can definitely see.
Right.
This is the only disadvantage in online arbitration. If you have a correct connectivity and internet service provider providing good and pakka services to us, we get done a perfect arbitration and through online by using the information technology. If
Right.
there is a interruption, then everything will go on. That is the only disadvantage. Except that everything is advantage only. Even in International Chamber of Commerce, they had in Annexure 1, they had given a guideline that has been framed by the ICC arbitration, and also in Singapore Arbitration Center and World Intellectual Property Organization and London Court of International Arbitration and Indian Council of Arbitration also they are framed. And in the year 2014 itself, our Law Commission of India has adopted, they had given some guidelines has been framed by our Law Commission to formulate some guidelines in respect of online arbitration, because to reduce the burden of the court, the purpose of the arbitration enactment is enacted by the Parliament is based upon the International Convention on International Trade Law. They had drafted a model law for simplifying the procedure in all countries. In uniformity of procedure has to be adopted in all countries who are all the signatories in the International Convention, and our country is also one of the signatories in the convention. So we had formulated the guidelines. It should be simplified. So compared to the court of law, if it is a simplified manner, then only the foreign investor come and invest it. Because as far as the commercialization after globalization and liberalization, all the countries has invested money in India for manufacturing. As far as the global practice is concerned, in China and India is the main hub for manufacture. So whenever they are coming forward to invest the money in India, so they want the litigation whenever the money has to be invested, the litigation should be done in a time bound manner. If they are taking 10 years, 20 years, mean nobody will come and invest it. That is why our government has strictly has formulated enacted an amended arbitration act in the year 1996 and in the year 2015 and even in 2019 also the institutional arbitration has been incorporated in that section 11 3 subsection 3. So therefore all these sections speaks about time bound manner to render a justice to the parties. Whoever approach in the arbitration tribunal, they have to justice should be rendered in a time bound manner. They cannot take endless time for getting adjournment and taking the prolong the proceedings. So therefore, in case of absence of the parties to come to a conclusion for formulating the procedure to be adopted in arbitration under section 19. Subsection 4 of the section 19 is very clear. Arbitrator is vested with power, omnipotent power to frame their own rules by whether the in-person hearing is required or not, or any documentary evidence is sufficient to come to a conclusion. It is purely a omnipotent power has been given to the arbitrator tribunal to take a decision, and the only point is he has to give a fair hearing to the both parties. So he has to just and fair hearing should be given to the both parties. Equal opportunity has been given. Equality doctrine. So therefore, he has to render the justice based upon the documents and as well as the time-bound manner. He has to render the justice. So the purpose of the legislation is only for the purpose of reducing the burden of the court. So court burden should be reduced, and that arbitration be conducted in a time-bound manner. And the litigant overall approaching the arbitration tribunal has to get justice in a very limited span of time without spending much money and time in court of law. So that too, if online arbitration is concerned, it is very time effectively, more efficiently, we can get a justice in a time bound manner, cost effectively, and it is eco friendly. So it will not take that much of disadvantage. Advantages in very 90%, 90% is there. Only minimum advantages like as the interruption in internet connectivity. That's all.
Right. Rohit, can you give closing remarks?
Just to add,
Yeah.
when it comes to close the remark, is we have been talking about the advantages, we have talked about disadvantages. Let me talk about the real challenge. If we have to, after the COVID situation improves, are we going to go back to the old procedures, or are we going to continue on the online the way we have been doing now? My real sense is that probably lawyers and the arbitrators themselves would be the biggest challenge in migrating to online operations for a long time. If you look at the lawyers, either of the side who wants to delay the procedure is objected to having the virtual arbitration. And also because they have given this kind of a logic that they are very risk averse towards their clients. So that could be one of the hurdles. And the arbitrators, because they are so resistant, they suffer from a change fatigue, is what I say. So they are very resistant towards kind of change that is being introduced. And because they come from an old school of thought, for them to absolutely shift from the physical files and physical documents, looking at things on the computer, referring to the documents on the computer, is going to be the real challenge. And the third challenge would be again lawyers, a decline in fee revenues, because when you are traveling outstation, you are charging outstation. Here, when you are having virtual hearings, you will see that there will be a decline in the fee. So that could be one other reason for the lawyers to be, resisting shifting to an online arbitration. So I think even though it's going to be there for a few months, the larger objective that online arbitration has, thrown upon us should continue, and that is would be the factor here.
Yeah. Rohit?
Yeah, as rightly translated by Shweta, challenges will be there. Obviously, there are people who will oppose the proceedings also, and technology always comes with all kind of ups and downs, booms and pain for that matter. So So, but yes, the selection of the proceedings as an in-house counsel, if you ask me, maybe, the priority, the matters which I like to push as an in-house counsel, which maybe not much critical, does not have a, very big ticket size cases, or maybe low ticket size cases, the voluminous kind of thing, no brainer kind of matters, stereotype kind of matters with a low ticket size, not much complicated. Those matters can easily be handled, I think, online, with online arbitration also, obviously subject to, the other party has to be tech savvy for that matter, because that's a very good excuse for anybody, for party also, as an advocate also. So I simply saying I really don't know how to use this technology at all. Maybe he's been watching YouTube day in day out, but yes, for online arbitration he may have his reservation for that matter. Yes, the choice of arbitration, the choice of matters which you need to push is also very important. The success or failure depends on all those things. And one more aspect which I see, the arbitration, unlike a traditional litigation, it has an element of privacy between the parties and the arbitrator. So until unless it is concluded, or the award has been enforced, or it is goes to the arbitrator, or the entire records goes to the court, entire matters becomes a matter of confidentiality, or it's become a matter of privacy between the three parties, the two litigating parties and the arbitrator. And I really don't know how this online things will going to answer this kind of thing, because the other party can easily say, like, this could be a breach of my privacy also, because unless until otherwise in a traditional way of doing it, offline kind of arbitration doing it, unless until it is not matured, it is not enforced, award will not become a a piece of a public information for that matter. So yes, that's another way of looking at it. I really don't know how to answer this question, but yes, that's a challenge. Somebody can object, online arbitration can breach my privacy, which is absolutely against the principle of privacy of arbitration and something like that. So yeah, that's another way of challenge. Otherwise, I think it's a technology is always a beautiful tool. It's it strives a very good life, work-life balance and all those things. So yes, it has a flexibility, it has complexity. So we have to live with it. As I said, it's all hit and trial. We need to see how it unfolds in the future.
So basically, online arbitration has some advantages and disadvantages, but still it is a good method to adopt in future. That's what we can conclude here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was a great discussion with you all, and thank you very much for joining Success Channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.